City, Illinois. I attended elementary and high school there, and by the age of 18, I was signed on by the Boston Red Sox. Started after pitching a 13-1 season in an independent Lawrenceville team. Started my professional career as a southpaw, a left-handed pitcher for multiple Texas League teams. I struggled a lot at first, lost a lot of close games by slim margins, and I was willing to do anything to break that curse. Everything else I tried didn't work, so I decided to dye my hair red. And I think it worked out too. I pitched well the following season in Mobile and was invited to the spring training with the Red Sox. The year was 1926 and I was finally in the big leagues. Even though my stats in Boston didn't really show it, I was a big part of baseball history. I got to face off against the one and only Babe Ruth during his monumental 60-home run year in 1926. I even gave him his 23rd and 24th home run just to help him out so he could set that record that would hold for another 34 years. In 1928, I was traded to the St. Louis Browns, where shortly after I was sent back to the minors. But in 1931, I was back in the major leagues playing for the Philadelphia Phillies, where a sore arm took me out in just the first inning. I spent that entire summer going to many doctors and taking treatments, and I was finally back in the minors just that next year. I pitched professionally until 1937 when a calcium deposit in my pitching elbow, forced me to retire from the game that I loved. I retired to Louisiana with my wife and 8-year-old son, Larry, where I pitched a total of 4 years in the major leagues. But although I experienced many hardships along the way, my determination made me reach my dreams of actually playing in the major leagues. My pitching record was 20-40 with a 4.87 ERA, and I had 134 strikeouts. But the highlight of my career was facing off against the Sultan of SWAT, the Titan of Terror, the Colossal of Claw, the King of Crash, the Great Bambino, Babe Ruth, 63 times in my career. And that was a pretty big highlight. Harold James Wills, a 5 foot 9 inches, 168 pounds from Clay City, Illinois, struck out Babe Ruth not just once, but 9 times in my career. Now that's how I want to be remembered. Thank you.
Well, hello. Please excuse me as I only have a few minutes, as I'm getting ready to leave, and I still need to get our children ready. We are headed to a funeral, and we do not want to be late. Today is a sad day for our country, but it's also a very stressful one in my household. You see, my husband is in charge of everything, out at the cemetery, that is, the burial. So let me take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about myself and my family, so you'll come to understand how it is that I'm getting ready to attend the funeral of a president. My name is Marie Connett. I lived most of my life in Florida, my mother's hometown. I was born in 1915. Now, looking at me today, you'll probably be surprised to hear that I'll live to be just a few months shy of my 100th birthday. I guess you could say that I begin and end in Florida, but all the places that I'll go in between. My life's adventures actually began when I met and married my husband, James Connett. He was the son and grandson of Methodist ministers and kept the tradition going. We were married in my junior year while I was in McHenry College and married by my father-in-law. I ended up leaving school so I could be a preacher's wife, and we began our life of ministry. Now, some of you might be thinking, how adventurous is being a minister's wife? And I actually thought the only adventure we would have would be moving every few years when the church relocated us. Boy, was I wrong. You see, my husband had a second calling, that of the U.S. Army. It was wartime, and he heard that there was a shortage of chaplains, so he signed up. He graduated from chaplain school at Harvard University and basic training, and he was shipped overseas with the 42nd Infantry. They landed at the Battle of the Bulge, and they were the first soldiers to liberate Dachau prison camp. I stayed at home, and I moved, though, to Florida to live with my in-laws. Reverend O.E. Connett had just been assigned to the Florida Methodist Church. I concentrated on taking care of our 2 children and doing anything in the war efforts that we did back then, and praying. When James returned, we returned back to our life of ministry, and he stayed in the National Guard. We were in Effingham when the call came again, this time a little louder. James was recalled to serve in the Korean conflict. I stayed home again, but this time with 3 children to tend to and many more prayers. James was still a chaplain, but he was in an airborne unit this time. I don't know what this 37-year-old man thought he was doing, but he started jumping out of planes, and he led the way. He looked at the faces of those scared young soldiers, and he thought, I'm gonna go first, and they'll think if the chaplain can jump, I can jump. Thankfully, he returned home again, but this time to a military base. He was now a career chaplain, and we were able to be with him. We lived in Germany, Hawaii, and even Alaska. But our most memorable and important service is right here, where we are today in Virginia. James is the post chaplain at Fort Myer, Virginia, home of the Old Guard and Arlington Cemetery. He oversees 32 burials with full military rights every day. There are weddings, and he counsels people, but nothing compares to today. Today, we lay to rest our 35th President, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. I am honored to be able to attend the funeral with our children. We will sit across from dignitaries from other countries. James has been to the White House several times already to meet with the Kennedys to plan the burial. I do hope it goes well. He's already laid to rest Medgar Evers when he was assassinated. We never dreamt of another assassination, and this to be of our president. In later years, James will oversee the burial of former President Herbert Hoover and those poor astronauts, Gus Grissom and Roger Chaffee. At the end of his career, James will be honored with being named Chaplain of the Year for the U.S. Army in 1967. We will return to civilian life, but then in 1973, my James will die suddenly of a brain aneurysm at the age of 53. Both of our sons will serve in Vietnam, with our oldest being a chaplain as well, a 4th generation minister. Our daughter will serve in her own way by marrying a Marine. I will return to Florida to live the rest of my life. Some of you might remember me from Sunday school class at Methodist Church. I am a doer, and I plan on doing a lot in my retirement, with my gardening, with church, and doing for others. When I do die, I will return to Arlington Cemetery to be buried with James, together on that sacred ground, buried in a double-decked plot. If you're ever out that way, do be sure to stop and visit us. Now I really need to go. We can't be late. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to Elmwood Cemetery. My name is Jerry Bowman, but everybody called me Jay. I was born in Iowa in 1877, but I ended up right here in Flora. I love this town. I was so proud to run my business here and raise my family here. And I still remember meeting my beautiful wife Nell when we were just youngsters playing in the alley up behind the Methodist church.
Thanks, sweetheart. I can remember when I first heard that he had typhoid fever in the Army during the Spanish-American War. They sent him back to the States for recovery, but recovery was doubtful. My father knew I was in love with Jay, and always had been. My father was John Cunningham. He was a jeweler. He sent a nurse down to personally nurse Jay back to health. I was for sure he was gonna die.
Well, I didn't. I made it back, but hadn't been for the nurse, probably wouldn't. When I got back, I was ready to settle down, and I was able to marry Nell in 1902. And I had heard Mr. Southwick had his hardware store for sale. Well, I had worked for Mr. Southwick before the war. I was his apprentice, and I learned all the ins and outs of the hardware business. And I was a pretty hard worker, if I say so myself. I was able to buy Bowman's hardware with a little help of my father-in-law, and turned it into a successful business.
Don't sell yourself so short, Dad. Hi, I'm Martha Bowman Allen, his daughter. Dad was the leading merchant hardware salesman in all of Southern Illinois, and everybody around town agreed that he was the most hardworking and ambitious man they had ever met. You name it, he could do it. Tell them about us girls.
Well, Nell and I had 3 girls. Anna Mary, Martha, and Marguerite was our youngest. I called them my 3 queens.
Now let me tell you a story about how when us 3 queens ended up featured on a postcard.
Oh my, that postcard was so embarrassing. The girls were in their play clothes and just so filthy.
Now Mom, it wasn't that bad. You see, what happened was the King Cutter Company used to drive around and take photos of people doing day-to-day things, and they would turn that into a postcard. A cameraman drove by one day and took a photo of me and my 2 sisters outside playing in front of the house. And, well, we were in our play clothes. That photo was turned into a postcard for Bowman Hardware. Bowman Hardware was a King Cutter dealer. We had a huge sign out front that said King Cutter, great big. King Cutter sold all kinds of things. Shaving kits, stoves, appliances, you name it. We had it. That postcard was seen by everybody, not just people in Flora. Everybody across the United States saw it, and they agreed that we 3 girls, well, we were just adorable. But Mom was still very embarrassed that we were so dirty. But, oh well, that's real life though. I sure did grow up in one of the prettiest houses in Flora.
I hear that home is being restored back to its former glory by the Larks family. Our home is a large Queen Anne Victorian that sits on the corner of East 6th and Sycamore right here in Flora. It was designed and built by Frank S. Nichols in 1906.
That name may sound familiar to you because Frank also built the depot as well as a few other beautiful homes around Flora. Frank was a concrete man and was responsible for pouring most of the first sidewalks here in town. Our house was just fabulous. We had a beautiful built-in mother-in-law suite that my grandmother Anna lived in. She moved in with us because she was widowed and wanted to help Mama take care of us girls. And I remember thinking that whenever she first moved in that she was just so old, but come to find out, she was only 45. And then my sister Mary kept pet chinchillas in the basement. We had a lot of those, and I thought they were just so cute.
Well, since I was in the hardware business, I had to give honest reviews. So all of our appliances and accessories and everything in our home was from our store.
We always had the newest appliances and accessories. Thank you for building us such a great home.
Well, you're welcome, dear. I was so proud to do it.
I loved our beautiful grand staircase. And on rainy days, I would always sneak up to the attic to play up there. I would sneak up the back servant stairs and play up there for hours. Oh, and the weddings. I even got married there. Remember that, dear?
My favorite day. You were a beautiful bride. Hi, I'm Leo Allen, and I ran Flora Lumber Company here in town. I took over the business when I was only 19 years old and ran a very successful business until my retirement. And I'm so proud that Flora Lumber is still in business today. I was also mayor of Flora from 1943 to 1951. Funny thing about Martha and I, no one called us Leo and Martha. We were Goose and Granny Goose. We even had these jackets. Everybody knew us, and we had such a great life in Flora.
We sure did. Thank you for coming out tonight to hear our story of the Bowman family. And remember the name Martha Bowman Allen, because you might hear more about me later, but don't believe everything you hear. Granny Goose loves ya.
Bye.
Thank you.
Enjoy your evening, folks.
Good job.
Bye.
Everyone, hope you're having fun so far. Let me introduce us. I'm Mike Genfy, and this is my lovely wife, Marcia.
Hello.
We live in a historic home on East 6th Street here in Flora. The house itself was built around 1904 by Edgar Hancock Sr. It was sold in approximately 1919 to William and Elise Lindsay. Over the last 120 years, it's had many occupants, but we want to tell you about one family in particular.
Now, Mike, let's not jump ahead. Let's first tell everyone about us purchasing our home. We bought our home on East 6th Street in October of 1982. And since the house was built, we can proudly say that we have lived there the longest.
Yes, dear, you're right, as usual. We bought our house 41 years ago from Mrs. Doris Holt. Doris was a Simpson, and with her family and their company based in Flora, they sold apples all the way around the world. This was through their company, the Simpson Fruit Company. Doris filled the house with their treasures and antiques from their many travels.
In 1935, the International Shoe Company here in Flora purchased our home for one of their employees to live in. His name was Emery Weber, and his wife's name was Bonnie. Emery was a superintendent of the company, and he had a very good job.
But here's the interesting part. Emery made a terrible mistake and ended up knowingly sending a whole batch of defective shoes to a major retailer, J.C. Penney's.
Guys, I'm standing right here. Do we have to talk about this now?
Well, it's kind of an important detail since we're here to tell everybody about your mysterious death.
It wasn't mysterious. It was suicide.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, sure,
that's what
sure,
you say.
Bob.
Okay.
Whatever.
Poor Emery. He was fired from his job because of his costly mistake. He lost his job, but they were still living in the house, at least for a while.
All right. Can I just explain what really happened?
Yes.
Hi. My name is Bonnie Weber. I was married to Emory. We moved to Flora in 1935 so that Emory could take a job at the International Shoe Company. The International Shoe Company was a fantastic place to work. In fact, they even provided us a beautiful house to live in. Unfortunately, Emory was a cheater. That's right, he had a girlfriend. It wasn't bad enough that the entire town of Flora was talking about my cheating husband. He went and got himself fired from his job. He walked around the house for 2 months, completely despondent. He was depressed, talking about how he was going to harm himself. Well, I had to hide the gun. Obviously, I didn't hide it well enough. It was a Tuesday afternoon, about 4:30. I was working in the kitchen and I heard a gunshot. I ran upstairs to the bathroom and there he was, lying in a pool of his own blood. He had shot himself.
That is not what happened. That's not even close to what happened. You just said you had the gun. You said you had it hidden. So even if I would have wanted to shoot myself, I couldn't have done so.
Liar.
Yeah, well, here's the truth. She found out about my girlfriend, Anna. See, Anna understood me. And Anna loved me. Unlike you. When she found out about my relationship with Anna, she planned my murder. She was in the kitchen all right, but she came up the back staircase. She shot me while I was in the bathroom. She threw the gun down, went downstairs, and called the police. You know, I got a sneaky suspicion that you might have even told Anna's husband about what you were going to do that day.
You are crazy.
Yeah. Well, just think about this. Anna's husband, the day that I was murdered, just happened to be walking down 6th Street that day. Ran right into Martha Bowman Allen and asked her if I was dead. You hadn't even pulled the trigger yet. That's what's crazy.
I'll have you know, the police never questioned Emory's death as anything but a suicide.
Oh yeah, the coroner ruled it a suicide, but that's because you're a conniving and convincing actress.
Yes, the coroner said that it was a suicide. It said the bullet went through Emory's chest and landed in the styling of the door. You can still see the bullet hole in the woodwork of our upstairs bathroom door. And I have seen Emory's ghost in our house. One night I heard a noise and I sat up in bed and I saw a man in a red and black plaid shirt coming up our stairs. We made eye contact and he turned and he went back downstairs.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't mean to spook you.
One morning I got up and went downstairs to make the coffee, only to find the coffee was already made, it was hot, and the coffee maker was unplugged. And Mike was still upstairs asleep in bed, and there was no one else in the house. But I have never been afraid of you, though. I know we're friends.
Maybe you can rest now, Emory.
Well, I hope so. At least now I've gotten to tell you all my side of the story.
That's right. Well, folks, that's our story. Now it's for you to decide. Was it suicide or was it murder? Thank you all. Have fun.
Good evening, and welcome to my final resting place. My name is Joseph Franklin Luce, but everyone just called me JF, as was common for men in my lifetime to go by the initials of their first two names. And this is my wife, Mrs. J.F. Luce.
Excuse me, I prefer Bertha.
As I was saying, this is my wife, Bertha. And tonight I want to tell you a story of something terrible that happened to her right here in Flora in 1925. It involves a group of those no-good gypsies.
Now, dear, don't get all worked up. I'll tell the story. It was Thursday, and I was working downtown in Schiffman's store. I saw a group of ladies riding around in Hudson cars, and I knew that gypsies were back in town. Everyone knows they're thieves, so I was going to have to keep my eye on them. But when they came into the store, they didn't see me, but they found my coworker, and they asked her for help with an item.
Well, it was my responsibility, you see, to distract the clerk. My name is Maria. I'm a traveling gypsy, and I come through Flora about once a year.
I can't believe you're back here. I never wanted to see you again.
Well, I just came here this evening to share our side of the story. You see, here it is. When I was in the store distracting the clerk, I was also casing the joint out, okay? But I didn't know old Bertha there was watching me the whole time. When I finally spotted the cash box, I just couldn't help myself. I made my way over to it and I robbed it.
You sure did, and you were sly as a fox, sis. I thought we were gonna make a clean break, too.
Yeah, me too, and we would've, had it not been for Bertha and her beady little eyes, nosing around, seeing the whole thing, ruining the plan. Soon as I had my hands on that cash, I had 1 foot out the door. Oh, Bertha was right on my heels, along with the other girls. She caught us, she took back the money, left us with $5. Then she called the police and got them involved. When they got there, you know what they did? I'm going to tell you what they did. They took our last $5 and they ran us out of town.
Yep, that's how it happened. Oh, well, we tried, and we didn't even have to go to jail.
Not this time.
We just had to get back on the road and head to the next town
With a store. Like sending us gypsies down the road was punishment. I mean, that's how we lived. We moved from campsite to campsite every year. We stayed right out here at Charlie Brown Park for years and years. We sold pots and pans, we sold jewelry. We even got hired by local farmers to harvest the apples right here in the orchards in Flora. We made an honest living. Sometimes.
Now you girls are going to have these people thinking gypsies are nothing but tramps and thieves. That's just not the case. My name is Estella Broadway. I am the queen of the gypsies. I'm buried at East Lawn Cemetery in Salem. My grandfather was Samuel Jones, the king of the gypsies. When he passed away, I became queen. I always wanted to be a queen, you know. It was a beautiful evening, and my husband, Richard, was crowned king that day. We had one son named Charles.
And he married me. I am Mazzella Broadway, also queen of the gypsies. My husband and I were crowned king and queen when my mother-in-law Estelle here and her husband passed away.
I was 47 years old when I died.
Oh, it was so sad to lose her at such a young age. But sadly, I only lived to the age of 44. But you know what? Let's talk about the good things about the gypsies. You know, I don't want you guys to believe all of the lies about us.
No.
I used to believe all the lies about you guys. I really did. My neighbors said you were horrible people. My name is Mrs. William Kerr. 2 of my children are buried here at Elmwood. I'm buried just north of town at Golden Cemetery. I accused the gypsies of kidnapping my children. You see, I hadn't seen the children all morning, but I did see a band of gypsies go by, and I just knew they had taken my babies. We had the whole neighborhood looking for the children, and we even got a posse together to hunt down those gypsies. Well, my children were found just 30 minutes later. They were quietly picking flowers in a nearby orchard. I guess you could say I jumped to conclusions.
Definitely. You sure did, honey. We had a bad reputation. Well, basically because of these 3 nuts. Not to mention that hoodlums would come to town after we traveled through. They were the ones that would commit the crimes, and then we would get the blame for it. But nothing was worse than those silly teenage boys.
Oh, they were awful. They were always doing horrible things around town and then blaming the gypsies.
They were awful. I I just couldn't stand the way they just break stuff and then they blame it on us. I just wanted to wring their little necks.
Oh, I know, I'd get so mad at them.
Oh, just want to punch them in the face, but we're peaceful people.
We really are. We're just peaceful, loving,
Yes.
kind people. And you know what else about us is we love music. We love to sing and dance.
Yes,
didn't
we do.
girl?
We traveled all over this country. In the wintertime, we would go south. In the summertime, we'd go north. We would travel through Clay County once or twice every year. When we were here, we made baskets and we sold those. We also had other goods that we traded. But there was one thing we loved to do above everything else. Girls,
Fortune telling!
Fortune telling!
Can I read your palm? Learn the future and avoid trouble.
Ooh, let's see here. My girls, my crystal ball's over here. Oh, crystal ball, speak to me, please. Oh, she says it's going to be a glorious evening. Many spirits will be revealed. Many stories will be told. But you will favor the gypsies above all. Thank you for joining us this evening and have a wonderful evening. Hey, you forgot to pay us.
Many great things happened. Picture this, the year was 1921 and great things were happening.
You bet. Babe Ruth just hit his 138th home run, being the 23-year standing record.
Yeah, but the Yankees could have beat the New York Giants in the World Series. The Bambino couldn't.
Stop it, that is not what I meant. I was thinking about the end of the war. The U.S. and Germany just signed the Treaty of Berlin.
The war had been over for 3 years. The treaty just made it official.
Some not so good things happened that year, like some guy named Adolf Hitler became the chairman of the Nazi Party, and FDR contracted polio, whoever that is, and the Communist Party was formed in China.
Come on, I want to focus on the good things in Flora. We had a lot going on.
Yeah, we had a movie here that was filmed here during Booster Days, and everyone was able to participate in it. They even had a contest for all the dolls to see if they can get the lead role.
Hey Layla, why didn't you get a part?
Brothers, by the way, my name is Layla Hemming, and this is my little brother Verl and his friend Lauren Barnes.
The most exciting thing was the opening of the new Orpheum Theater in September.
Yeah, they had a new machine, so they didn't have to switch reels in the middle of the movie.
All the singers and musicians they had, I just loved Brown Saxophone 6.
It would have been better with an oboe.
What about a trombone?
Stop. Well, they had other stuff too, like plays, lectures, school productions, and even church services.
Yeah, church services. That's where I should have been.
And just like that, never doubt that a single moment can change everything.
That moment changed our lives. I so wish I could go back and change what happened.
I should have been at the Orpheum that Sunday night with my mother, but I was across the street talking to the girl.
We were just horsing around. I didn't hit him hard.
No, it wasn't hard. No one said it was. All those witnesses and no one said it was hard. No one.
It wasn't hard. I just lost my balance and staggered back and fell.
He hit his head, and we thought he was joking at first with all the heavy breathing, but...
There was no blood. I didn't see any at all.
I couldn't catch my breath. They carried me into a restaurant. They called the doctors and got my mother from the Orpheum.
By the time the doctors got there, it was too late. I'm so sorry, Lauren. I didn't mean to kill you, really.
It was an accident.
They took Lauren's body back to his parents' house and the next day had the inquest. Dr. Saget said it was a concussion from his brain being shaken too hard in his head when he hit the pavement. It was just an accident, a horrific accident.
That moment changed my life. I moved out of Flora after my mother died and I got divorced from my first wife. I moved to California where my 2 other brothers lived and got remarried. I had kids, but it never left me, not once.
I married a Flora boy and moved to Flint, Michigan. We had a son, but then I too got divorced on the grounds of extreme cruelty, non-support, and habitual drunkenness. Him, not me.
And I was mentioned in one newspaper article. Flora young man drops dead on street. I was buried in Elmwood Cemetery, and then my parents followed me years later. I just wish more people remembered me before that fateful day.
1921. Many great things happened, and then that moment.
Where are you buried?
I don't know exactly where I'm buried. I'm just kind of wandering right now.
All right. Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight out here. So glad that you could join us. Me and my siblings all were raised on a farm here in Clay County. I should introduce myself. My name is Virgil Henry Volk. I was born in 1924. As I said, me and my brothers and my sisters were all born on our family farm. My father and I and my brothers Don and Lewis, we all know all about the constant demands, the hard work, and all the labor that takes place that comes along with a family farm and all that takes place with that. And what it takes to raise the farm animals as well.
Got that right, Virgil. We had to get up early every morning just to keep that farm flowing and to keep old Bessie kicking Lewis here in the head.
Is there a bit?
Don, you know that animal was nothing but trouble. I got so sick and tired of Bessie kicking me. But I will say this, all the hard work out on the farm, getting up early, doing all the things we did, even old Bessie prepared us for what was going to come in the next few years of our lives. And so maybe I should apologize to Bessie or maybe thank her. But anyway, I'm glad she's gone.
You guys remember the day that we left the family farm and we joined the U.S. Army and all the training we went through so that we could go serve our country and fight in the Korean War?
Sure did.
Sure was a hard day for the family. And can you imagine how hard it was on poor old Mama? I mean, seeing the three of us barely grown boys trudging off to a country across the ocean to fight the evils of the enemy.
Mama was special. Mama would write letters 6 days a week. And she would mail them to me and to them. And what happened? We would get them all at the same time because the postage just didn't get to us every day. She was special.
She sure was devoted.
Now listen, boys, I've heard about enough of how hard you worked on the farm because Antoinette and I were at the same farm. We got up just as early as you did. We did the same chores. We had the same life. And let me tell you what else. I had to help Mother raise you three plus 2 other sisters, and that was the work on the farm. Let me tell you what work on the farm was.
Now, Ernestine, let's not get too boastful.
Just like a woman to interrupt.
I'm kind of glad she did.
Well, I know I don't have to remind you two about basic training, but it was anything but basic.
All right, my favorite story about basic training. Big old guy comes in, we're all in the barracks, and he announces, I'm gonna whip everybody in this barracks. Virgil looks over and said, hey, I guess I'll go first. Oh man.
And before you knew it, old Virgil had that guy bent over a foot locker, and he said, if you make one more move, I'm gonna break your back. That boy decided right then and there to leave everyone alone.
Always
way to go, Virg.
Boys.
You guys remember the argument in the chow hall?
Oh, that cook was just being way too bossy. Can you imagine anyone being picky over how you peeled the potato? If I remember correctly, that started out to be a really good fight.
Yeah, and then the cook pulled a knife on a private. Well, the private, we had already given him a name, aka bodybuilder, and the private was over 6 feet, and he grabbed that cook and he put him up over the head, and yeah, fight was over.
Yeah, we sure had some great experiences.
Sure did.
Sadly, though, it all ended way too soon for me. Our platoon was leading the 1st Battalion when we all came under enemy fire over there in Korea. There was a lot of casualties. I noticed that my platoon leader and 2 of my friends were wounded, and several others were tied down under sniper fire. I ran in and grabbed my platoon leader and was carrying him out when I was wounded. I really didn't care about the pain in that moment. I just ran back in, grabbed one of my friends, and as I was carrying him out, I myself was mortally wounded.
You know that I adored you, Virgil. You and I had such a close relationship growing up on the farm together, and it broke my heart to think that he wasn't coming back to our home and our family and the farm and the animals that he loved. And probably the year that followed his death, I thought the Lord should come take me too, just to be reunited with Virgil. But God had different plans for me. My family knew me as Ernestine Philomena Volk, but I joined the Poor Handmaids of Jesus Christ Convent, and I took the name of Sister Mary Loretta Volk. And I was led to teach children in Indiana and Illinois for many, many years.
It was sure hard to go on without you, Virgil. But the whole family is pretty proud when you received a Silver Star for gallantry in action at the age of 26.
Yes, we were.
Now, I thought I had a large family of 5, but old Lewis here, he really knew what large was.
Okay, are you referring to my 8 daughters? Or are you talking about my 4 sons?
Oh my.
Maybe you're talking about my 50 grandkids? Virgil, you would have loved your nieces and nephews. And we made sure they knew who Uncle Virgil was. And how you had sacrificed for your country and your family, and how much you were missed. And I will say this, when it comes to sisters, there are none better. Now, Mary, Loretta, and Antoinette, who I call Tony, we were very proud and are very proud of everything you've done. We may not have said it ever, but anyway, we do appreciate you and all you've done and all the people that you've helped. And yes, we may have to apologize in there, but right now, why don't you tell them how you almost got to be 100?
Almost. Pretty close. Well, now, I don't like to boast.
But she will.
Whoa. It's true, I was the longest living member of the Volk family. I had many, many, many glorious years. I went on to also join the same convent as my sister. I became Sister Antoinette Volk. I served my ministry over at the Angel Guardian Orphanage in Carlisle, Illinois. It was the love of our family, expressed in our home, that helped inspire my love and helped me to assist our community. I would help to make blankets and comforters to give to those in need. And now, Ernestine, I will admit that all of that hard work on the farm actually did help to prepare these boys for their time in the service.
Probably.
But I'm going to say that it was all of their antics and shenanigans that helped prepare us for our time in our chosen ministries. Now, as chaotic as they may have been,
These boys did grow up to be fine gentlemen, and they did have very big hearts for their family and for their country. We were a very blessed family indeed.
Very blessed indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for spending this time with us. Enjoy the rest of the tour. Have a wonderful evening and great weekend. Thanks for having us.
Okay. Chicka-lacka, chicka-lacka, chow-chow-chow. Boomeracka, bow wow wow. Chicka-racka, chow, boomeracka, wow. Flora High School boy and how. Woo!
Oh, now Hottie's gonna go out with me.
Carlson, Stanford, drop and give me 10. You need to be paying attention to what I'm saying and not focus on ogling that cheerleader over there. Now get out and give me 10.
Darling, you understand that the coaching staff and the team, we both really appreciate your support, right? But you're gonna have to move along. You're too big of a distraction, I'm sorry.
Coach, do we really have to do these? You just made us do 50 of them, and Stanford has to go see his girlfriend later.
That's what I said. Now give me 10 push-ups. Friday night, we have a big game against the Alney Tigers. And if we hold them scoreless, we tie for the conference championship. Plus, if we hold them scoreless, we've only allowed one team to score 1 touchdown on us all season. Now this is huge. Get to work.
All right.
What's taking so long? Get up! Come on! You guys aren't focused. You need to work on your handoffs and you need to work on your passing. Now come on, get to work! Work!
Coach, you think on Friday night I'm gonna be the quarterback, maybe the fullback, or a linebacker?
Stanford, don't worry about that right now. You stay focused on the fundamentals. You need to work on offense and defense. Now work on both of them because we need to be in tip-top shape come Friday night against the Tigers. Now get to work. Work! Oh, hi folks. I didn't see you roll up. I'm sorry. Once I get in coaching mode, I don't see a whole lot else going on around me, and I apologize for not seeing you earlier. But hey, any football fans on board? Yeah! Well, football ranks up there with my other favorite F's in life. Family, faith, Flora, and football. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in a town way up north called Forest, Illinois, in Lovington County. Now, just because it was up north, it wasn't much different than Flora. A small community, but we liked our Friday night football. And I liked sports so much in high school that I lettered in 4 events: football, track, baseball, and basketball. Now, after I graduated high school, I went to the University of Illinois, where I played football there for 3 years. I also played baseball and track for 2 years at the collegiate level. Boys, work on our block. Come on, we need to get down there. You need to get out, you need to fire out, and you need to hold that block longer. We were weak against the Tigers, and we need to make a wall against them now. Work on your blocking. Now get to it. Work! Let's see, where was I? Oh, in 1927, I graduated from the University of Illinois with a degree in education. And I was lucky enough to land a job right here in Flora. And I worked here in this education for 39 years. Now, maybe you've been to the field that bears my name, and if you haven't guessed it by now, I'm Bert Dancy. And I was the head football coach here for 31 years.
My name's Charlie. I'm gonna be the quarterback Friday night.
Stanford, get over there! I told you to quit talking to that cheerleader. Have you not heard that we got a championship on the line come Friday night? Come on, get to work! Work! See, where was I? Oh, 31 years of coaching, right? And people will say that we were lucky in those 31 years. It wasn't luck, it was hard work. We won 10 NEC conference championships, right? That's 10 championships in the North Egyptian Conference, one of the oldest conferences in the state of Illinois. Oh, well, hello, dear.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah, sure. And don't forget that even after you finished coaching, you stayed on for 8 more years to perform the duties of the athletic director at the high school. And then in 1959, you were installed as the president of the Illinois High School Coaches Association. And then in 1960, they gave you the William McAndrew Memorial Award, which at the time was the highest award a coach could receive. But probably the biggest honor was when they named the football field after you. And you got all of those things just for doing what you loved.
Coach, you think we could quit?
What do you mean quit? Come on, there's no quitting football. Come on, we got a championship on the line. If you haven't heard that by now, come on, you guys need to stay focused. Talking to cheerleaders, not working hard. Come on, we got a championship to win now. Get to work, work.
Stand them on their heads, stand them on their feet. Flora High School can't be beat. Woo!
Work! Let's see. Getting back to the topics of Flora and family. My wife Eleanor and I, we decided we were going to live out the rest of our life right here in Flora. And in 1971, I ran for city council, and I held that position until my death in 1974.
And I lived here for 12 more years in our little house on 6th Street until I passed. Our little house, by the way, was a Sears home in the 1920s, 30s, and all the way up until 1940. You could actually order your building plans and your materials from the Sears catalog. It was very popular around here in the Midwest, and we built ours in 1930. Our children, Nancy, Jean, and Edward, they both attended all their school years here in the Flora School District, and we all just really grew to love it here, and we made Flora our home. Take that ball across the goal line, make them fall, touchdown, touchdown. Woo!
All right, that's enough. You guys are not focused on this championship. All right, run some gauntlet drills. Get to it. Let's go.
Ha ha.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you have the opportunity to go down to Dancy Field, make sure that you root loud and proud for the Flora Wolves. These boys and these girls, they work really hard and they deserve our support. Now come on, boys, we got a championship to win. Let's get to work.
Woo! Let's go Flora Wolves!
You know it, Jim. Well, hard enough.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that phrase in my life. I'd hear it night after night when I was traveling with the exhibitions and performers that performed with the circus. My name is Hugh Tolliver. I was born in May of 1870. I was born with a rare skin condition that caused my skin to be leathery and scaly like an alligator. That's why they gave me the nickname Scaly, an alligator boy. Well, due to my rare condition, I could join the traveling show and with other people that had rare conditions and deformities or special talents, we could travel and make a profit with them. Now, luckily for me, even though I look like this, I found a wonderful woman who fell in love with me for who I am inside and not for my appearance. So that's why I'd like to introduce my wife, Phoebe, to help tell the story tonight.
Welcome, and thank you so, dear husband, for having me join you tonight. My husband, Hugh, and others performed in side shows of a traveling circus. They were called freak shows, and sometimes they were even the main event of the traveling show. P.T. Barnum was the greatest showman of the time, and he was very famous for his circus acts. He was also a very big promoter of these freak shows.
Now, as you could imagine, it was difficult for me to live a life being called Scaly, an alligator boy. But I was able to travel and make a profit off of it with these shows, but I never made it big like some of the other performers that were with these shows.
My name is Liam. I loved it whenever these shows came to town. I never got to see the alligator boy, but I got to see a lot of other cool ones. I got to see the bearded girl, and I even yanked on the beard to prove it was real. Then there was a four-legged girl. She really did have 4 legs, 2 legs that were shorter than her walking legs. The tallest man, he was so tall that I could hardly see his face. And once I saw Tom Thumb, and I think he was even shorter than I was, and he was a grown man.
Well, many of these performers had disabilities just like I did, and they had to suffer a lot of humiliation with this. However, some of them took advantage of this in order to make a profit and have a good living.
Wait, I haven't told you about Jojo, the dog-faced boy. He looked like a werewolf. There was another guy who could spin his whole head around. I think they called him the human owl. Lobster Boy's hands looked just like lobster claws, and almost every show had a set of Siamese twins. I never really thought about it, but most of these people did look really sad. Shouldn't yank on that girl's beard.
My husband couldn't control his disability, but there were some performers that decided to purposely make a rarity in themselves. Some of them would even develop skills or talents to become famous. I know you've heard of fire breathers, hypnotists, magicians, snake charmers.
Well, many of us weren't paid very much money for our talents. Despite the millions or thousands and thousands of shows we performed, not to mention the humiliation we would have to go through. But some of us would find a niche in order to make some more money for not only the shows we performed for, but then we could also ask for more money for each performance.
And the promoters, man, they made a lot of money for many years. But by the 1920s, circuses were no longer popular events. Instead, modern attractions took over. Also, people became more educated during these times, and they realized that physical disabilities were not a mystery. Instead, they could be explained by genetics. My husband was no longer considered to be a freak. Instead, he was an object of sympathy. No fear, no disdain.
Well, you may ask yourself if people like myself could have some sort of normalcy in their life. Well, the answer to that is some. See, some of these folks knew nothing but these freak shows in their short lives. And they had to do this in order to make money and survive. However, some of us were lucky enough to come out and have some sort of normalcy to our lives, like myself, when I met Phoebe Workman here, who later became my wife.
A few years ago at the cemetery tour, you got to meet my brother, Charlie Polka Dot Workman. He was a sanitary engineer here in Flora, and his story was surrounded by the story of an outhouse. Well, just like Charlie, we are equally honored to be able to share our story with you guys tonight.
Well, Phoebe and I were lucky enough to have 2 children, Joseph and Charles, and I died at the young age of 58, and I'm buried here in Elmwood Cemetery. Now, there are millions and millions of people on this world. All of us are different, some of them due to genetics, due to a deformity, or even an accident that may have happened. But even though some people are not considered normal, they have the ability to live a normal life and add a great value to our society. We wish you all a great evening and enjoy the rest of your tour of the cemetery.
Thank you.
Popcorn! Fresh, tender, and tasty popcorn right here. 5 cents a box. Oh, hello. My name is George Buck, and I grew up right here in Flora during the Great Depression. My father, Rollo, was a brakeman for the railroad, and my mother, Georgia, tended to our very humble home on East North Avenue. Of course, spending money wasn't very easy to come by in those times, so in high school, I started up my own popcorn business. I also played trumpet for the school band and was voted most musical my senior year. Let's just say the ladies had a soft spot for a guy that could pop both high notes and kernels. Yep, the world was in the palm of my hand in 1938, but a brewing war was about to change everything.
World War II transformed the world. Bombs and bullets obliterated vast numbers of people and places. And although memories of 78 years ago have faded, many countries, including America, were reshaped by social, political, and economic changes.
I remember the night my father sat in his armchair and folded up his newspaper without saying a word. It had been 2 years since graduation, and I just informed him that I planned on joining the Army Air Corps. My parents were proud of me, but they were worried. War tensions were headline news. But I went ahead and packed up my bag with a change of clothes, put a picture of my folks in my wallet, and they drove me down to Chanute Field and ran to her.
Autumn of 1940. Germany, Italy, and Japan joined the Axis alliance. December 7th, the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor. The very next day, the U.S. enters World War II on the side of the Allies, including Great Britain and the Soviet Union. Japan's sneak attack was a plan to weaken the United States. The land of the rising sun wanted to invade the islands of Indonesia for rich oil resources.
I received training to become a member of the flight crew and was assigned to the 35th Pursuit Group in Hamilton Field, California. We mobilized to Australia boarding the USS Langley, which carried a load of P-40 Warhawk fighter planes and pilots to Java.
Langley was the Navy's first aircraft carrier. It was later converted into a seaplane tender, which merely transported planes.
The Langley came under attack by 24 bombers and fighters, just south of Java. There were flames everywhere, and the boat was tipping sideways by the time the commander gave the order to abandon ship.
Other ships rescued the majority of the 500 men, and because Langley failed to fully sink, a torpedo was launched into it so that it would be scuttled and not salvaged by the Japanese.
I boarded an old destroyer, the USS Edsel, with the rest of my Army Corps group. Other survivors went to the USS Pecos. We watched the Pecos as it departed off to Australia, its deck covered with men, many of them injured.
Later, Pecos was brutally attacked, and it went down quickly into the sea. The Japanese continued to circle the area, firing on the many survivors in the water who were clinging to lifeboats and floating debris. Eventually, 200 men were rescued from Pecos, but over 500 perished. Now, the USS Edsel, it continued on, carrying 153 men, including the rescued 31 pilots and 12 flight crew members from the Langley.
There wasn't much talking on the Edsel as we watched the sky. Our spotters sighted Japanese cruisers and battleships. We knew our old weapons wouldn't stand a chance against the heavy Japanese armor, but our commanding officer told us that we weren't going to go down without a fight. For hours, we laid down smoke screens, used evasive maneuvers, and rapidly changed our course.
In a remarkable feat of defiance, the USS Edsel managed to escape almost all hits from the Japanese, at least for several hours. Japan dispatched multiple dive bombers, including 500-pound bombs, and these were eventually more than that old ship could take. It went down, sending all the men into the sea, and only about 10 survivors in the water were picked up by a Japanese ship. Now, old Japanese war diaries and documents confirm that Japan was embarrassed by the dancing mouse. That's what one Japanese commander nicknamed the Edsel because of its clever survival tactics. Japanese ships and planes, they had to fire over 1,300 shells and torpedoes at the small destroyer in order to overcome it. Years later, bodies found in a mass grave included the last few survivors of the Edsel. They had been beheaded by the Japanese at Kandari prison camp after enduring several weeks of interrogation.
Before going out to sea, I came back home here to Flora on leave. Mom and Pop had just built a brand new house right where the old one stood, and I told them I couldn't believe I was going to be living in such a beautiful place. But I didn't think I'd be back to see it. Of course, they didn't like hearing me talk like that, but maybe it prepared them for the telegram they would get a couple weeks later. Although my body was never found, there's a memorial here at Elmwood made by my parents which reads, "In loving memory of our son, George H. Bunnell, who gave his life for his country March 1st, 1942. You are forever in our thoughts. God only knows how much we miss you."
The war ended in September 1945 when Japan surrendered. The courage and sacrifice of many men and women who will remain forever young should be remembered. Some vanished in the deep sea, thousands of miles away from homes they would never return to. They truly paid the high cost of our freedom. Thank you.
Thank you.
preserve my body, honey, when I'm gone. When I go, I would just like to be gone. Don't you lay no fancy stone above my head. Don't you lay no fancy stone above my head. Don't you lay no fancy stone above my head. I'm changing my name when I'm dead. Don't you put no fancy shoes upon my feet. Don't you put no fancy shoes upon my feet. Don't you put no fancy shoes upon my feet. Well, my brother has got nothing to eat. Don't you dare tell nobody it's just my time. Don't you dare tell nobody it was just my time. Don't you dare tell nobody it was just my time. Going out in a blaze of glory when I die. Won't you help my wife to sing a morning song? Won't you help my wife to sing a morning song? Won't you help my wife to sing a morning song? She will do for you when your husband is gone.